Hello, my name is Kaylee Colston, and I'm presenting the 5 articles that I did a summary and a critique over. The first article is Child Growth According to Maternal and Child HIV Status in Zimbabwe by Omani and Tazini. The second article is Outdoor Play is Essential to Whole Child Development by Frost and Sutterby. The third article is Identifying the Dimensionality of Oral Language Skills of Children with Typical Development in Preschool through 5th Grade by Lonergan and Milburn. The fourth article is From Lead Exposure in Early Childhood to Adolescent Health, a Chicago Birth Cohort by Winter and Sampson. The fifth article is Early Life Protein Intake, Food Sources, Correlates, and Tracking Across the First 5 Years of Life. And this article is by Campbell and Abbott. Let's start with the first article. Child Growth According to Maternal and Child HIV Status in Zimbabwe by Omani and Tozini. This article was about whether infants who have HIV live a normal life or not. The study was conducted over 10,000 individuals. Factors that were included were whether the child had HIV and when they developed HIV, and whether their mother has it or not. It found that those who have HIV experience growth failure, far more common than those who don't. It also found that those who developed HIV earlier on in life suffered far more than those who developed it later on in life. This article is very thorough and it explained everything, even all the abbreviations that were used. It included graphs and charts, and they also included keys and captions to explain what those graphs and charts stood for. Now let's go to the second article. Outdoor Play is Essential to Whole Child Development by Frost and Sutterby. This article was over whether, or it's actually about how parks came about, even though the article says that outdoor play is essential to whole child development. It explained that Central Park came along because New York was very busy and children had no safe place to play and relax. Because of that, Central Park was developed, and that was a safe place for children to go play in after school. Of course, there were adults monitoring the park to make sure that the children were out of harm's way. This article was very misleading because of the title. The title stated outdoor play is essential to whole child development, but it did not mention why or how it is essential. It is informative though, just not about what the title suggests it would be informative about. If they included a study referencing how they got that, or how it's essential to child development, it would fit a little bit better. Besides that, I found the article a good read. Moving on to the third article, Identifying the Dimensionality of Oral Language Skills of Children with Typical Development in Preschool through 5th Grade by Lonergan and Milburn. This study tested the oral language skills across preschool through 5th grade. Factors included in the testing were grammar, vocabulary, and listening comprehension. It found that there are fewer dimensions than otherwise noted, and it also listed the limitations, which included different age groups having different appropriate testing strategies, which made it hard to make sure that each test was accurate and equal. This article was harder to read because it included a lot of scientific words and phrases throughout it without explaining what it means. It also included lots of statistical phrases. I understood the statistical phrases easily because I took a semester of statistics in college. Had I not taken that, I would not understand what they were talking about throughout most of the article. Because of that, I believe that most readers will struggle to understand what they're talking about because of all those statistical phrases being used. This article did include tables, but there were no explanations or captions telling what the table is showing. Moving on to the fourth article, From Lead Exposure in Early Childhood to Adolescent Health, a Chicago Birth Cohort by Winter and Sampson. This article tested lead exposure and the effects, and I found it very important and interesting because it does relate to today's world. For example, it relates to the Flint water crisis, which is going on in this country. So not only is it a worldwide problem, but it's also in our country. Researchers tested the blood lead levels of individuals, and they used the average blood lead levels to make sure they have an accurate representation. This also will help reduce the amount of mistakes later on. They also recorded demographic info such as the individual's house, their neighborhood, their behavior, mentality, and physical well-being. It was found that those who are a minority or poor have a higher blood lead levels than others. Also, those residing in poor neighborhoods have a higher blood lead levels than others as well. Now, blood lead levels, the higher they are, it can lead to anxiety, depression, and aggressiveness down the road. So it's very crucial to monitor that and make sure you do not expose yourself to a lot of lead. This graph included a thorough explanation of everything, including all the factors and all the individuals tested. It also included several charts with a title, captions, and a key. Because of the title, captions, and key, it was more easier for the readers to understand what the graph is supposed to be showing and what they were looking at exactly. Lastly, the fifth article, which is Early Life Protein Intake, Food Sources, Correlates, and Tracking Across the First 5 Years of Life by Campbell and Abbott. This study researched the protein intake and the effects that protein intake had on children. Things that were recorded included feeding time and the amount of food that baby ate. Also, the height and weight of that infant and the BMI of the infant. Other factors included were the age that infant stopped breastfeeding, the age they started consuming solid foods, the mother's age, and the mother's pre-pregnancy BMI. BMI stands for Body Mass Index. It was found that children who started solid food earlier and who stopped breastfeeding earlier were to have a higher protein density than those who stopped breastfeeding later on. This article was very interesting because it used common terms, meaning it was easier to understand because it did not use too many scientific terms. They also included several graphs and charts throughout their article, and those graphs and charts were thoroughly explained. There were captions and titles as well, which once again thoroughly explained the charts and tables. This article also included an abstract that went over the key points, so the reader could read that and know what they were about to read a more depth version of. I found that very interesting and very helpful because it gave me an insight of what I was about to read and also helped me understand more of what they were talking about. Lastly, this article we all know is trustworthy because it was conducted by doctors with multiple degrees. That makes it more trustworthy because these doctors know what they're doing and they know, what everything they're doing, what they're supposed to do, all the steps to take, so we know it's a trustworthy source. Those were the 5 articles that I produced a summary and a critique over, and yeah, thank you.